Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sysco Canada's first podcast, Webinar Wednesday podcast post session. We just had a panelist talk, our first Canadian panelist talk, with industry expert, a ton of industry experts from across Canada and the US. We have Greg today on the call, and Greg and myself are going to chat a little bit about today's today's webinar on this podcast. And really, what did we learn today from everyone? What did we take away, and what can we take away as we move forward? So welcome, Greg, and thanks again for hosting today's Webinar Wednesday. I thought it was awesome. Great information.
Thanks, Jay. Listen, why don't we, because this is a podcast and you can't see who we met, why don't I briefly introduce who our panelists were. We had a celebrity chef from the Food Network, Chef David Rose. We had another chef by the name of Sabrina Falone from Toronto. Her company is SF Creative Culinary Services. We had Joshua Karam. He's the CEO and co-founder of a company called Hire, which is he brought a HR perspective to our discussion today. We had Maeve Webster. She's president of a company called Many Matters, based out of Vermont, US. And we had Jason McBride, CEO of a company in Canada called Hustle Hospitality Network International, which is a global networking community of restaurateurs. So it was a lot of fun hosting it. All these experts, it was interesting to hear them all. They brought, obviously, their own perspective to our key questions. But it's interesting to see how we're really all nodding at the same time, agreeing with each other, how the questions were answered. They all seem to be on the same wavelength and the same thought process for the most part. What do you think, Jay?
I agree. I was actually quite amazed to hear the good conversation that happened, right? Like usually you'll hear one person talking and the other person, sits in the corner kind of thing and doesn't really talk about anything. And today we had everyone really contributing to the call and really contributing to that webinar. And the topics, we're going to get into the topics here in a second, but to hear their perspectives, I thought they all brought an amazing difference within their perspectives of what the questions were. So I was really excited about that, and to hear such a diverse perspective on everything. It was awesome to hear. And for them to be all over the U.S. as well, and it wasn't just one person in one area or they were in the same room, but to hear them from I think one was in Virginia, one was in Georgia. We had Josh in New York.
Yeah, Vermont,
Calgary. You're in Winnipeg.
Yeah,
I'm in Edmonton. Like to be able to do that today, and to hear everyone's perspective, I love it. I think it was really, really cool.
Yeah, it was good. And I think that so far, as I was telling you offline, the feedback from people around me that attended the webinar and listened in said it was very good. They really enjoyed the panelists. But most importantly, they were great panelists. They brought great content, great comments, stuff you can actually utilize and apply to your business. So for sure, it was a good first time for a multi-panel webinar.
Yeah, you know what? I would agree. Totally agree. So let's get into these questions, Greg, because we want to take everyone on a long podcast without having some exciting dialogue. And
sure. So you want me to we'll just kind of follow the flow of the questions I used on the panelists?
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's talk about those.
So what we did is we kicked it off with a general question to get all the panelists talking one at a time. I just asked them from their professional and individual viewpoint of the industry, what are some key trends they're seeing happening right now in Canada and the US? And that opened up the door to a bunch of stuff. We kicked it off with celebrity chef David Rose from Food Network. He really focused on the whole idea of global cuisine being such a major influence, especially when he said he referred a lot to how things were when he first came to North America. And he says that he's blown away by the extent of global cuisine and ongoing flavor trends like that. Sabrina representing, sorry, I have to check my notes again. Sabrina was representing Creative Culinary Services. She talked a lot about the emergence of growing new segments, different and new segments. So The idea of food trucks is, still relatively a new kind of a segment idea. She talked a lot about food halls. For sure, that is a growing trend we're seeing, and emporium style mass locations for restaurant choices. So that was a good observation. Josh, on the labor side, he just talked about that it's one of the top heart and mind topics in restaurateurs right now is managing labor, whether it's rising wages or retention or just simply getting people, period. That was really his focus. And it makes sense. He comes from an HR perspective. Maeve from Menu Matters, she talked a lot about, once again, she agreed with the new segment. And she also mentioned, this was an interesting observation. I'm not sure what you think of this one, Jay, but she made an interesting statement when she said, our restaurateurs are being pushed to follow so many rapid changes and trends that they're feeling stretched beyond their capabilities to even keep up with it. And that was an interesting point. But she also mentioned that from the supply side, suppliers and manufacturers are equally challenged and struggling to keep up with these new trends. And when she said that, I really thought about it for a second and went, yeah, that is very true. When you think about in our world, in food service distribution, our manufacturer supply partners, they're all rapidly trying to adjust to this new demographic that wants more plant-based solutions. They want, non-GMO products. They want to know everything from source. That was a very good observation that she made. And then lastly, Jason from Calgary, he kind of gave a counter narrative that he was basically saying, you know what, restaurateurs are getting fatigued with all this rapid change. Everything's moving too fast. And he said, in his mind, he says, what he's seeing is his businesses trying to not try to ride the wave of everything that's happening and just trying to stay focused on delivering good food and a great guest experience and really leveraging a local market position. So very astute way to help some restaurateurs to ride out the storm and not get fully overwhelmed with everything that's going on. So a good mix of responses. What do you think?
I definitely I think their responses were just outstanding when you think about the diversity that they all kind of gave us. But I do really like the fact that Maeve kind of called out this craziness that we have right now across, I guess, the industry of the trends and the shift in trends and the shift in the industry, the shift, tomorrow we don't know if something comes out that we're all going to have to do it because it's something that the consumers are looking for. And that can spread so fast today with using technology and using social media that we could say, don't use forks anymore because whatever reason, and everyone would have to get rid of forks. And we'd have to see that trend instantly come across. It's similar to the straw scenario a couple years ago when the straws came out and everyone really had to make a shift on having plastic straws in their operations to today where you were almost looked down if you have a plastic straw. And I honestly think they're banned in some cities too. So look how fast, look at that, how fast that came in and left. That's what's happening is that how do you position your business model? Because most business models don't happen up overnight. They have to develop through the years, right? Like it takes a while to get your roots grounded like a tree into your marketplace, into your cities, into your communities. And how do you continue to bring in these new trends or these new things that are shifting in there? It's very hard to stay focused on that and stay moving forward on that without going, I just can't do this anymore. I don't want to do. I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't know which way to go. Yesterday was plant-based. Tomorrow is functional. What is the way that I got to go to make a living on this? And I can see where operators are very frustrated. Now, to Jason's point, where we believe that operators have to provide local and really guest experience, I agree with Jason on that point as well, because I truly believe that those are the avenues that you need to also include in your business model, along with everything else we talked about today, is really the keynotes to what you need to do to drive your business forward in today's consumers, I guess, landscape. And then how much you adapt to in the industry throughout the year, based on what comes through as new trends shift, you need to make a decision if you're going to do that or not and stay true to it. Unless it's a major one like the straws, where pretty much everyone had to jump on that right away, or you were going to get roasted on social media. So I love the fact on those things, and really what that one bullet is, or what that one way to go is. All those points from global cuisine to what David said, absolutely, right? And food halls, Sabrina bringing up food halls,
Yeah.
huge, right? And the new segments that are coming in, there are, maybe not as fast as they were a few years ago, but they are still coming in, and they're very exciting. And that's another thing that we need to look at, is what's that excitement that's coming into the industry that we want to go and dine at, right? And that's really challenging our independent operators to really decide if they want to go that way. Like, very challenged right now in the market where, 10 years ago, trends would come in and you'd see that trend kind of cycle around for a year or two, or maybe 3 or 4. And today you're seeing trends come in almost quarterly through the year. Very tough.
Yeah, I think I want to also say, when I think back about the conversations we had in that webinar, no one talked about retail. And we all know this is also a growing segment, a new segment that's getting more and more relevant for customers to choose a restaurant experience. They don't necessarily have to go to a restaurant. They can get it from retail. So it's interesting none of them mentioned that. But once again, if we had more time, I would have brought it up myself and asked them what they thought of the retail influence as well in our industry.
And that, it's funny you say that, because that was a miss. Maybe if we want to indicate a miss on today's webinar, we definitely have to talk about retail. It's definitely the silent monster in the room, if you want to say monster.
Yeah, I think it is. I think it is almost like it's almost like the foot is, open the door a crack, and now the legs stepping through, and very soon the body's going to step through. It's going to be this big elephant in the room.
Yeah, and that's where I think it is a surprise that they didn't bring that up, because it definitely is something that we need to talk about, and we need to address it. And that's kind of where I was saying at the very end when I was mentioning that we got to embrace this industry. We need to bring out the passion that we have. Recently I was at Vikram's restaurant in Vancouver last week, and his passion and the way he hosted our table and the way he hosted us, you don't see anymore. And it was incredible. And he just talked to us, and he shared his passion with the food, the room, the tapestry on the wall, to the lights, everything. He had a little bit of himself in, and he shared that with us. And most restaurateurs today, especially independents, have that. And it's exciting to see it. But that, to me, is what we need to do to continue to combat this, this white elephant, if you want to say, in the room, that is closely nipping our business away.
It's nothing new. It's just treating the business like a real business, and not just trying to slough your way through it. You have to care about the industry. You have to have passion. You have to engage the guest. Yeah, it all ties together. Listen, why don't we talk about the second topic? Was and this once again could have eaten up the whole webinar, as we dug into third-party delivery services a little bit. And if I could summarize from my notes and what I heard, there seemed to be a general apprehension from the panelists to really get behind it. I don't think correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't get the vibe they were saying don't do it, but there was definitely a lot of apprehension from them in terms of the risk factors and controlling your product and your brand. And so we didn't have the time to really dig into deep how to navigate this effectively, but for sure it's here to stay. And that was the overarching question I asked the panelists: is it here to stay? And they all agreed, yeah, it's here. And you probably need to play in this arena one way or another. I just wish we had more time to dig into it. Maybe that's a future webinar.
It could be. And definitely when we look at this third party movement and we see companies spending $500 million in the US market on introducing ghost kitchens to really cater to the third party delivery better, I truly believe that it's not going away. I know it's not going away.
Don't forget, I shared this article with you weeks ago. The former owner, the founder of Uber,
Yeah.
who's no longer with Uber. He got $1 billion investment from a Saudi, some rich Saudi
Mm-hmm.
investor, so he can build his brand called Ghost Kitchens. This is going to be a global thing he's going to launch. It's going to be crazy.
And that's a little bit insane in a way, because that takes a lot of food to sell to recoup that cost of that investment.
$1 billion,
Think about it. Yeah. Right. So that is not a short-term game plan in my mind.
No.
Right. That's a long-term game plan. So
Yeah,
this thing's around here to stay.
We're on the same page. We think alike. And when you look at those kind of investments, it's not a one-off. No different when we talk about plant-based proteins. When you just look at the billions of dollars being invested in new plant productions and so forth, it's hard to ignore it. It's hard to bury your head in the sand and say it's not going to stick around.
Well, just one thing also on that, Greg, before we go into the next point here, is that we always say this, and we talk to our customers about this, and it's about the third party, is just know your numbers.
Yeah.
You need to know your numbers to make it work. I believe it can work for your business, but you need to know your numbers, because there's a portion of the fact of what it does is, you sell food to it, but it's this amazing marketing platform that you can advertise through social. It gives you a new dynamic in your restaurant. It opens up to a vast majority of customers or people that may have not want to go to your restaurant, right? May not have the ability to travel across the city or be able to go and sit in a restaurant because they're busy or whatever the case is, or they're a stay-home mom or a stay-home parent that can't leave to go to a restaurant, but they want to taste your amazing food. So we need to look at it not always as a negative, but definitely as a positive as well. But the biggest thing I always say to restaurateurs is just simply know your numbers. Know your numbers on this. Know your food cost and your items that you're putting in those boxes, right?
Yeah, that was that's probably the overarching message when we talked about that. And right from there, we went into labor, and that's where we had Joshua. And actually, he said it when we talked about the labor challenges. He says, one of the ways restaurants are trying to navigate rising labor costs or lack of labor or keeping labor. He talked a lot about modifying services. He talked a lot about limiting dine-in during peak hours. So in other words, why are you using third-party services during your peak hours? You're just stressing your kitchen. You're probably paying extra staff to be around for a very expensive sales platform being third-party services. So I thought that was a good word of advice for our listeners. And I've said that myself talking to people is know your cost of third party and why are you turning it on when you don't need it. So that was that's good to hear that from him. He also mentioned around labor, more and more restaurants are exploring incentives. But the overarching message we heard from all the panelists was you need to invest in your people, from training to caring to supporting. And that was kind of the overarching message across everyone. What do you think?
When's the last time a chef came out and told you about the food that they just cooked for you? Probably very rare nowadays.
Yeah.
But I believe that we need to train our servers not only to know how to host the customer at the tables, but also to embrace the passion of working for that restaurant or that location. And so that's why we need to train them about the amazing food, why we have that food on the menus, where does it come from, tell the story of how hard it was to build that restaurant up. We need that passion to be put into our servers, into our hostess, into the people that are taking care of this restaurant of yours, because I guarantee it, we always say this, and you see this a lot across the country, is the manager will come in or the owner will come in and give this amazing experience, leave, and then we hope the 18-year-old or 20-year-old server has the same passion about the operation.
Well,
unfortunately,
Jason, sorry. I was just gonna say, Jason out of Calgary made a great analogy when he talked about if you owned a car dealership, you wouldn't hire a new salesman and just here you go stand on the floor and sell cars.
Nope.
And but that all too often happens in the restaurant side. Shadow this employee who's been with us for maybe 3 weeks. That's going to be your trainer.
And that, like I come from way back in the day working for a large chain, and we had to write a test. We had to know the food. We had to know the wine. Yeah. We know the pairings, the food, where it came from, what was in it, down to the specific spices of what's used, all those different things. And it wasn't just a fact for allergens or whatever the case is, but it was really about how do we romance the products and talk about the products and talk about the operation and what was so great about it, because that creates that experience that they would talked about a lot, right?
I also I threw my own two bits at the end of this in terms of this is what the Gen Zs, this younger generation, they value training, they value input. They want to know, why am I doing this?
And Gen Z, you're so right, Greg. And when you look at Gen Z, they want this. They want to know where their food came from.
Yeah.
Right? And they want to hear that. So when you look at this, and it's a little different from the millennials, where they were, hands in their phones and they're trying to figure it out. Well, this new generation that's coming and starting to dine now, make their decision where they're going to go all the time. They're wanting that experience. So we've got a perfect good storm in a way that these consumers now that we should be targeting when it comes to who your target is on who you're going to go after is the Gen Z. They want those experiences now. So why aren't we giving them? And that goes back to a little bit to the labor area, right? And being more business smart about your business and understanding what you need to do so you can give those experiences so your servers are not just running around and taking orders.
Yeah. My comment got kind of lost in the crowd, but I did say, this is my own personal belief. I think our industry needs to become professional. I think the days of just schluffing along, not really applying the basic rules about how to operate a business effectively won't work in this future restaurant industry. I think they got to buckle down and treat it like a real business. So training, invest in your people, ongoing training, right? Proper sales and marketing strategies, not just hoping people will show up because you got good food. It's got to be everything, and you got to treat it like a professional business.
But how exciting is that?
I'm hopeful. That's our hope, right? That can we help the industry and help our customers through Sysco understand that the bar's moved and you just can't wing it anymore. You got to deal with this professionally if you want to make money at this and be successful.
And you go back 10, 14 years, 15 years since we've been in this department of business resources and how we help thousands of customers each year. How many of them actually made that decision 10 years ago to start, watching their food costs and labor costs, and all those different factors? Very few did. But, I was at a conference last week, and when I asked how many people do inventory or food costs, they all put their hands up. So when we start, and that wasn't the norm 10 years ago. So as we move forward, it is definitely something that you need to survive. It's simple. To survive, you need to know and run it like a business.
Yeah, this was it's so funny because just before the webinar, I actually had an interview with a customer who's struggling on making money. And one of the topics we talked about was they offer a bottomless cup of coffee for $1.75. And it's bottomless. And that same customer who says, well, don't raise your price or I'm going to leave you. The only other option you have is they have to go to Tim Hortons. And what are you going to pay there? You're going to pay $1.75 for a single cup. So I was trying to give her the courage to understand you can still have a bottomless price. It's got to be higher though, and offer them a single serve price. Give them both. And if they want the bottomless, they got to pay for it. Otherwise, you're not going to be around to give them bottomless in a year.
And then on that, you bring in a local, or you attach yourself to the brand of the coffee, and you get your servers to talk about it at the table.
Yeah.
Right. And there's your value that you added another 25 cents or 50 cents to your cup because your server said, would you like to enjoy our beautiful house blended coffee that was made especially for us?
Yeah.
Right. So there's ways to work around it, but we need to start thinking and not even start. And there's some people are, but people need to get the business mind into this. And they get, because the days of, and we see it today, it is the survival of the fittest almost, is we need to know your costs. You need to know how to sell. You need to work on your marketing. You need to work on your social marketing. You need to have strategies and plans in place to really survive and continue.
Yeah, I think I'm going to keep using this banner. We have to bring professionalism to this industry.
Yes, and that's
no
you're right.
No more fly by night.
You're absolutely right, and that's where we didn't see that 15 years ago. And there was, there was, But I honestly believe that it's the direction you go, because you're competing with, um, everyone's competing with that. So the people that are going to make success of this, and we see this within larger organizations that have multiple locations, they have plans. They have 3-year plans. When's the last time an independent operator said, here's my 3-year plan of what I'm going to do to sell food moving forward?
Well,
I've never seen that. To be honest, I've never seen that with the thousands of customers we help each year.
well, and let's move on. But final thing I'm going to say around this is, everyone will say the market's oversaturated. There's too many choices, and not just in food service and retail options and so forth. It's just so many choices. Are some people are going to fall by the wayside? More than likely. And in fact, the forecast information we're getting is that kind of a forecast.
Mm-hmm.
So who's going to be around in a couple of years from now? It'll be the ones that I personally believe that brought systems and professionalism to their business and how they operate.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're right.
We've got
You're absolutely right.
a couple more topics we covered. Moving out of labor, we went into social media. And just in terms of an overall statement, I would say that David Rose made a great comment. It's free for the most part. I totally agree. He kept emphasizing, embrace the social channels. They're free. Maeve, who brought a lot of industry knowledge, talked a lot about YouTube and Facebook and Instagrams. They all were very universal in videos are better than posts, even though you should have both. They all nodded their head when I asked them that question. They said, for sure, you got to have videos in your social feed brands. And then I think Jason McBride mentioned the idea of LinkedIn, which we sometimes ignore.
Mm-hmm.
Or was that you? I can't remember who said that.
Yes. And I think you can have 2 podcasts regarding social media. So many things about social media. I guess the biggest thing that I see right now, and also I think they kind of hit it on the nail here, is not everyone's using it. Not every restaurateur is using it, and if they are, they're not using it effectively to drive their brand awareness of their operation of their restaurant. Right? We see weird posts. We see posts about food. We also don't really necessarily see them driving their customers to post for them. So we don't see this creation of a demand sense where they're getting customers to post about their business. We see this in a lot of national chains or larger customers out there. They figured it out. But a lot of independents, one, they don't really have a social media strategy plan, or they haven't farmed it out, because there's a lot of options there to use companies like Orderies that will take care of your social platforms, but have no plan. And today, it is critical. If you're not on social media as a restaurant, you're missing millions and millions and millions of opportunities to grow your sales. And that's huge. And it's free, right? The only investment you need to do is time.
Yeah.
Is really in this, right? Time is invested in this. And the impact with Gen Z. So Gen Z, you're targeting Gen Z today. What are you going to target, a newspaper? No. You're going to target the way and what they use for communication, and they all have a hand or their cell phones glued to their hands. It's simple.
Yeah. And in fact, I think it was Maeve that also she wanted to mention that when it comes to that generation, YouTube is their number 1 platform now.
Yeah.
And when we think about a restaurateurs, even we're guilty of just saying, make sure you've got a Facebook page, you're using Facebook, you're doing posts and videos on Facebook. Don't forget Instagram. It's a great platform for taking pictures of plates. But even I'll admit, we haven't done a great job of helping them understand the importance of how YouTube might play in, depending on the demographic they're going after.
It's true, right? And every social media outlet has a different way of using it, right? And how do you post on Facebook is different than how you post on LinkedIn. You need to understand that. You need to learn about that, but you need to use it. But you need to use it effectively. And we need to make sure that the people are understanding it. There's so much training online that you could understand how to do it. But that goes back to that invested time. But back to how operations are ran and really having that business mindset, you need to sit down. You need to open your computers. You need to sit with your staff and include your staff in the engagement because they'll be a big driver of your social platforms, right? So include your servers on, hey, let's talk about social platforms. How can we create this audience that you may have not even really leaned into? And I think that's a huge opportunity for operators today is lean into social media, understand it, use it as a part of your business model, and you should be successful. It's simple.
I think
Right,
it's
but
just
we don't
something even more
see that
important
much.
than social media, Jay, and I've seen this with restaurateurs I've met is in particular independent restaurants. I won't say this for chains, even though it could be true for them. Is I find too many independents don't leverage their staff at all. They treat them like an employee. They treat them like a disgruntled employee, as opposed to pulling them into conversation and empowering them to be part of your success path. And idea.
You're right. You're absolutely right, Greg. And I wrote this on a LinkedIn article last week on a waste one is actually look at your staff as a part of your business partner.
Well, treat them like a business partner.
Exactly. And treat them like a business partner opposed to, and that comes from the 80s and 90s is I'm the owner, you're the staff, you're going to do what I want you to do. Well, today's world, you can't get engagement. You can't get them to follow you. You can't get them to really look at you as their leader and a partner because they're partnering with you and you're partnering with them, right? And you need to look at it that way. So the more that you get them engaged and understand the cost of your products, the cost of your food, what you need to do, there's certain areas you may want to hold back. That's okay. But they need to understand those fundamentals about your business to be a partner in it. So when they're out there and they hear someone complaining about a food or have an upside table or something's happening within, the people that are taking care of in your restaurant, they understand the impact of that to the business, right? Not just themselves or, oh, well, we got more customers over here. Don't worry about them. All of that matters today. And we need to look at servers and our people, chefs in our front of the house, back of the house, as a part of your business. You need to include them in business decisions that you can, obviously, maybe some you can't, but try to include them in some of your big business decisions, right? Like social media. What are we going to do, folks? How do we get busier? Those things that we shouldn't try to do on our own anymore is including them. And I've seen it. I've seen the engagement level go through the roof. So what happens? They love what they do. They love the place because they're part of the business opposed to just working for the business. And I think that's important as we address these subjects like this.
Let's, there was one more question we covered, and then I had the rapid fire questions to end up the webinar. So the last question we covered was plant-based proteins. Why don't we just suffice to say it's pretty universal that it's here to stay. It's no different than the people that are looking for gluten-free choices. People are looking for the options on menus. And there is a general consensus that whether it's your core brand to be plant-based, you should probably consider having a few things on your menu. Jason McBride made a great comment, though, is eating vegetables is not a new concept, right? Before we discovered meat, we were eating vegetables. So it's more about you don't necessarily have to make anything new. Just look at your ingredients and make sure you've got a few recipes that maybe don't have meat in it and you're working with vegetables. So that was a great point to make, that you don't have to strategically, I got to build this new section in my menu. No, it's just modify or make a few choices within your menu segments that have a plant-based option. I thought it was a very wise way to look at it and not get overwhelmed with this trend.
Yeah, and it is a trend. I think it's a movement.
Well, movement. Trend's the wrong word.
I don't think it's a trend. I think it's a movement. I think it's welcome to the next category in our diets that I find very exciting on how we've branded and marketed it. Back to Jason's point, we've been eating veggies for a long time, and I fully agree. How we prepare and how we consume them may be different than we had in the past, which is okay. And very exciting.
It's more exciting application of vegetables, right?
Yeah. So why not? And then we look at a cost perspective. You want to make more money and throw a plant-based burger on there? Go for it.
Costs are lower.
Like your costs are lower. So what this and then the generation you're trying to draw in and trying to target loves it. So, and then the generation that maybe not as big but still has impact because they have lots of money is the baby boomers. They're increasing their plant-based diets because they want to live longer.
Yeah.
and they hear about the benefits of the health on it. So it's a perfect storm to have it, and to not have it. You, back to I think your point, Greg, on the call was, are we missing people or people that may be looking at this? If you have a group of 5 and 3 people want plant-based foods in that area and you don't have it on your menu, will they not go to that location?
Yeah, Jason, not J yeah, sorry, Chef David Rose's,
Yeah.
and his argument was that if you're a steakhouse, you're a destination choice, so you're going for a steak. But I wanted to challenge that by saying, well, what if you're a group of 5 and one of those people doesn't want to eat steak? Are you going to lose that table? I think it's a hard thing to do to have a couple selections in a steakhouse.
No, and I think the thing is you got to look at plant-based a few other ways too. One, it's typically prettier than a bunch of gravy and dark brown food.
Yeah.
So it's usually vibrant colors. What does that mean? That means it's social media worthy. That means you're going to get more impact on your social media feeds, usually off of plant-based foods. People usually don't take pictures of gravy and people go, oh, look how beautiful that is.
Yeah.
They usually take pictures of like beet meat or beet burgers and those things that are bright and vibrant in color. So that helps with your social media platforms. One, it's also a good thing to do for environmental reasons. It's a good thing to do for health reasons. It's a good thing to do overall. And if that generation that believes all of those statements, that Gen Z that wants that for their product, you should have something on there to cater to that, because you do limit yourself by not having it on your menu, or you don't have some simple solution. But don't just put it on your menu and not pay attention to it either. It needs to be good. It needs to be flavorful. It needs to be enticing. It needs to be colorful, right? It needs to be what we're looking for as we see this movement really grow and move forward as a part of what we do today.
So let's go to the last question. It was a rapid fire. I asked all the panelists the same question. Do you want to talk about each one's response, or should I just name them all off? And then
let's just go through them really quick.
Okay, so the question was, I wanted to end off the webinar in terms of what's one positive message? What's that one thing you could offer some advice to our listeners who own and operate restaurants? What's that one piece of advice you want to give them to be successful in 2020? Chef David Rose from the Food Network, his comment was, know your audience, like know who your customer is, and leverage social media. He really reinforced that. Sabrina from Creative Culinary Services kind of reiterated the same thing. Know your customer. Be relentless to know what they want. I really loved her. You can tell she's coming very much from a target perspective of what does your customer base really want from you and your business. Josh from Hire, he talked about the one thing is to invest in your staff, invest in retention strategies, invest in traction strategies. Just invest. You can't wing it. May from Menu Matters talked about strong branding and menu strategy. And Jason from Calgary from Hustle Hospitality talked about, I really loved his message, introduce yourself to your community. Know who they are. They need to know who you are. So really, Jason's approach I really love, because he's really talking grassroots marketing. Is your business is around your store. Walk down the street. You should know everyone. They should know you. And I liked him because you've got all these things you can do in your business, social media, other ways to advertise your business. But at the end of the day, the simplest thing you can do is get integrated in your community around your store.
Mm-hmm.
All that takes is your time to walk down the street and shake hands and tell them who you are. I'm the owner, and next time you come see us, I'm going to take great care of you. I love that. I thought it was a great parting message. A great way to round out the questions.
Mm-hmm. And I like that answer that Jason gave, because people don't do that either anymore. There's a lot of operations that just don't know their neighbors because, for whatever reasons, there's multiple, but I think, and also really just to be part of the community, right? And we don't see that.
It's so simple. It's so intuitive, and yet we don't do it. We open up these stores and we go, oh, I've got to have a social media platform. I've got to have a marketing campaign. Honestly, if you didn't have $1 in your pocket, what's the one thing you can do right now? You can get out of your restaurant, put on your jacket, and go walk down the street and knock on doors and introduce yourself and your business. That doesn't cost you anything other than your time and soul feed. That's the idea of grassroots marketing is if you don't have a buck to spend, you can leverage yourself and walk around your nearest customers.
I agree.
That'll
Yeah, and it was so basic. It made so much sense. So
yeah,
because we also in this industry is always looking for that shiny thing that's going to make us or break us, right? And sometimes it's already there. We already have it. We've already done it in the past. We just haven't done it again or done it in a while. And I think it's huge when we start looking at those aspects that are going to make our restaurants be around here for a long time.
Yeah. I've all the panelists, I really enjoyed Jason the most because he really brought a grassroots message.
Yeah.
Right? Know your marketplace, get connected, let them know who you are. That's such a simple thing to do. And yes, you have all these shiny objects you can try to use. And don't get me wrong, social media is important and websites are important and all that's important. But at the end of the day, you did nothing more than focus on connecting around your business, around your neighborhood. That's a foundational start to your marketing.
Yeah, I agree. Fully agree. Awesome. Well, you know what? So we're going to wrap up here because, we could talk all day, Greg and myself, about these different subjects. And frankly, we just love this industry and we love talking about it. And we love helping customers with it as well. So first of all, thanks again, Greg. Amazing webinar, and I hope everyone loves the fact that we do post webinar Wednesday podcast now. And we'll have new podcasts coming out hopefully in the next few weeks around these kind of subjects. And we're going to talk to guests out there and definitely really get to the bottom line of what we need to do to help people survive and strive in this industry, because it's so important that we keep continuing to love this industry the way we do today. So anyways, thanks again, Greg. Have a great rest of your day. And you know what, everyone else, watch out for more Webinar Wednesdays. We have one coming up on February 26th, I believe, at 2 p.m. Eastern Time with Paul Barron from Foodable Network out of the States. He's going to give us really an update on the Canadian market and what's going to happen this year in the Canadian market. He's got some facts and numbers that are just outstanding and will blow your mind on what you need.
I don't think outstanding is the word. I think provocative is the word.
Provocative. Okay. It'll be an amazing webinar.
I'm looking forward to talking to him. And if you happen to be listening to this podcast at the very end, you don't want to miss this one. This is, if you're worried or thinking about or concerned about your business and industry, you want to listen to this podcast coming up. It's going to be a webinar. It's going to be a great one.
Yes. And then please watch for us on YouTube. It's Sysco Canada's YouTube channel. We have tons of other webinars we've done this past couple of years. And also we'll have more podcasts loaded on there as well as on Spotify, just under Webinar Wednesdays under Sysco. And other than that, Greg, thanks again. And everyone else, have a great rest of your day.